everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to have you with us on a Monday. Glad to be back from the Pioneer Day holiday weekend. You know, it's awesome that we get 2 4th of Julys in the state of Utah. Hopefully everyone took advantage, went out, spent some time in the outdoors. Maybe, got on a boat somewhere, caught a fish, whatever it is. Hopefully you took advantage of summer. I am blown away that we're effectively 2 weeks out from school starting again for all you folks with kids. I don't like that one bit. It feels like summer started last week. In any case, we're glad to be with you, as is always the case here on the Sean O'Connell Show. All right. Today's a special day because we're going to do it every single year. It is low-hanging fruit, but it is something that we have a little bit of fun with, and I want you to have some fun with too. 877-353-0700. Call us, text us, tweet at me at RealOC Sports. Media availability for Camp Kyle is going to begin this week. We are going to be up there at practice, getting sound bites and all that stuff from players and coaches. As limited as the access will be, we will go there and we will get it. But because that's happening this week, we got to get out ahead of things on our predictions, okay? I don't want people being led by the words of Kyle Whittingham in their predictions here. Because we know that Coach Whitt, in the past, and hopefully he never abandons this. I know that there are people who want him to because they feel like we lost a certain receiver into the transfer portal from the University of Utah because there was too much praise being issued for him during spring ball. I do not subscribe to that school of thought. I think that people already knew who the good players in the country were, and you're going to get folks poaching whether you say this kid is good or not. Coaches rely on their own opinions of things and connections they had in previous recruiting failures, et cetera, et cetera. In any case, before Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley and Jason Beck start saying, hey, man, tell you who had a great day at practice today. I tell you what, who's impressed us during camp. Hey, you know, this cat might actually be something for us. I want you, the listener, the fan, at RealOC Sports, at 877-353-0700. I want you to get on the record and tell me who your breakout players on offense and defense are for the University of Utah. Now, be realistic, and the parameters are what they are, okay? If it's somebody who's already appearing on a preseason all-conference list, if it's somebody who's already appearing on a preseason award watch list, they're not a breakout star. Everyone expects that person is a star. Devin Dampier, a lot of the offense, quite frankly, is brand new. You can't say that Caleb Lomu is your breakout star on the offense, okay? These are people who are already predicted to be All-Americans and draft picks. Devin Dampier, you can't say he is your breakout star on the offense because even though he's new to the Utah offense, he was the first-team quarterback in another conference last year. 877-353-0700 at RealOC Sports. Give me offense. Give me defense. Tell me who you think is going to break out in a Utah football uniform this year. And by the way, I hope you have names because this university, this team needs breakout stars this year. You need people, especially on offense, to show up, to emerge, to be something special at the running back position, at the wide receiver position. Whoever your star tight end is this year is going to be, if you have one, is going to be a breakout. I don't think that Dallin Bentley counts as having had a breakout year already. So if that's your pick, go for it. Put it out there. At RealOC Sports, 877-353-0700. Tell me who your breakouts are. Because I need you to get on the record before Kyle Whittingham tells you who that person's going to be. All right? Otherwise, we're not testing your predictive abilities at all. You don't get the credit that you all deserve. One of my favorite things, I always ignore when I'm wrong, of course, but one of my favorite things is when I go back and I say, you know who's going to be excellent? Because I watched him on special teams last year, and now's his time to break through. And then you end up being right. When you're like, man, this Trevor Riley cat is going to end up being a really good player for the University of Utah. Number 49, watch him. And people are like, number 49? Why would I watch that guy? Well, because when he becomes number 9, as he climbs the seniority ladder in this team, he's going to end up being really special. Shout out to the Rattlesnake, by the way. In any case, get on the record right now. Also, reminder to all of you that as you're trying to figure out and navigate what your lunch plans are going to be for a Monday, you're going back to work after the holiday weekend, you don't feel like being back in work, you don't feel like sacrificing these final couple weeks of summer, Big Willie's at 1717 South Main, presenting sponsor of the Sean O'Connell Show. They've got lunch specials that they run every single day. And they brought in meals for us every day last week. They brought 5 days worth of meals, even though we only did 3 days worth of broadcasts. And let me tell you, they hit it out of the park on every single one of those meals. Craft cocktails, craft beers, and an incredible food menu, which matters a lot more to me. Go check them out at 1717 South Main, and, of course, tell them that OC sent you.
Because if it wasn't for me getting tested for something else, they wouldn't have stumbled up on this. And
let's get to your predictions.
Get the right care.
Colby on Twitter says, give me Jonnu Hall at linebacker. He's going to lay people out this year, setting the tone early and often. On the offense, I think it's Wayshawn Parker, and he's going to be successful with the dominant O-line. Look, that is a high percentage pick behind this offensive line to just say whichever running back you like best is going to have a breakout year this year, because we talk, I think, in too broad of generalities about Spencer Fano being an All-American, a preseason All-American. I want to make sure people know that his reputation in college football right now is based on his run blocking. When we talk about tackles, most of the time people are like, oh my gosh, this guy's got a perfect pass set, and that's why everyone's talking about him. Spencer Fano is considered the best run blocking tackle in the game. He's also good at pass blocking, so people talk about him being one of the top 2, 3, 4 offensive tackles in college football this year. But when you talk about run blocking tackles, he's the guy. Everyone else answers to Spencer Fano, so being a running back behind that's great news. James Peterson producing, as is always the case. Do you know who you're going to put down as your breakout stars?
I think I need a little bit more time.
All right, that's fine.
To decide on it, because there's a few candidates, and I need to narrow it down some more. Yeah.
Okay. Steven on Twitter, I love the defensive pick. He says Tobias Merriweather on offense. Please, fingers crossed, yes. Whatever superstition or faith-based thing you want to do in favor of football, send it toward your wide receiving core. Tobias Merriweather as a vertical threat, great. Jackson Benny is a name that people are probably not going to bring up enough. Jackson Benny as a playmaker on the defense, I love it. I love that pick. You've seen glimpses and glimmers, and Jackson Benny is a guy building confidence, putting on a little bit of size. I think could absolutely be a breakout star on the defense this year. Remember, a couple years ago when we did this exercise, there's not a person out there who's like Sione Vaki is going to end up being the biggest breakout star, really kind of on both sides. He's going to be the Swiss Army knife that none of us expected. And then what happened? He ended up being incredible, and he's an NFL player. Not at the position most of us thought he would be. Otto Tia coming in from Peace, Love, and Utes on Twitter. Sounds like he's going to turn some heads switching to tight end. If you're a big body wide receiver and I'm talking about 220-plus pounds, playing tight end in this offense, playing tight end for this coaching staff is probably the better move for you. The security blanket, the comfort with throwing to tight ends in that route tree, with getting the ball to tight ends and creating opportunities for tight ends and mismatches for tight ends is just something that I know it's a new offensive staff and I know it's a new offense, but this offensive staff and this coaching staff in general has been better at that of late than at developing the breakout star wide receiver. So if you're a wide receiver who has the size to jump in and say, I'll play some tight end, moving to that position, being willing to block a little bit more, put your hand in the dirt every once in a while, is a genius move for Otto Tia. I love it. Okay, James just whispered something in my ear. I put something in the notes today. I was hearing from only really one source that Deion Sanders, who's doing a press conference right now, that Deion Sanders might be stepping down as the head coach of University of Colorado today. And then, what little information you could find about this planned press conference, I was like, well, why would a healthy, totally dialed in, ready to go head coach have any kind of medical update press conference? Like, why would, if everything was going to be okay, why would you call a press conference to tell everyone everything's going to be okay? So I started to get a little bit nervous for the Big 12 Conference and for Colorado that circus was going to take over the preseason headlines. If Deion stepped down now, yikes. But James just whispered in the ear and said, no, it doesn't look like that's happening.
Yeah, it's a little strange, OC, and I apologize to the stream. I believe that we may have had that audio and you talking on the stream over the top of it because I was trying to record it anyway. So that's a user error on my end there if you had some audio issues watching it on the YouTube stream. But on the radio, you did not have such issues. His medical team started the press conference. They said that they announced that he had bladder cancer and it was potentially terminal, but the tumor's been removed and he's okay.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that's what the medical update is. Now, as to what you're saying, there were other college football Twitter accounts, people who call themselves insiders. Most of them I was not aware of. So if you hadn't have told me that you had it on good authority that he was going to step down today because of this health issue, and I just saw those, I might not have believed it. But I only say that to say you're not the only one in the media who feels like they heard on good authority that he was stepping down and is publishing that, right? So that certainly was the rumors that whatever health issue that he was going to announce in this press conference was going to be the reason why he was going to step down as head coach for Colorado. What's strange about this, OC, is no one has said anything about his intentions to coach next season definitively. So they're holding a press conference to say he had cancer and that he's cured.
See, I don't
understand it.
This feels,
but good for him. Like,
okay, I mean, great.
That's great, but like, do you need a press conference for that? And there's a bunch of people on Twitter, online asking that same question. Like, so everyone's kind of waiting for him to say, so what does this mean for you as coach of the Colorado Buffaloes? And since he and his team are not saying anything about that, the assumption is, since he is cancer-free now, which fortunately for him, good for him, he's probably going to coach next year, but we shall see. Stay tuned on follow the people who are at this press conference, and follow their tweets and everything else they're publishing about it.
Just to tell you where we're at right now as a sports public in America, all right? I typed in Deion Sanders to the search bar on Twitter because obviously that pulls up whatever has come out about Deion. And the first account is a verified Colorado Buffs insider. Deion Sanders was diagnosed with bladder cancer in aggressive form. His bladder was removed. He received a new bladder that has taken well to his body. today I learned that you can have a bladder transplant.
Did not know that either.
He has had 14 surgeries since arriving in Boulder. So,
including was that maybe it's not including? He had the toe amputate, the infamous toe amputation. Was that in Boulder? Or was that?
I thought that was
at Jackson State. Anyway,
I thought that was prior to his.
It might have been, but so since he's been in Boulder, he's had 14, and then we also know he had his toe amputated because of complications before that. So he's been through it in the last 5 years. OC, particularly the last 3, like you were saying.
The second thing down after you type that into the search bar is a callback to people blaming all of his health problems on the COVID vaccine. So that's wonderful. Just to see, just to throw that in there for fun. So look, obviously, we wish Deion well. The health stuff, it really puts it into perspective, right? When you're talking about someone who has been known to be, outspoken, loquacious, maybe overshare at times, and then, prior to Big 12 Media Days, there was all this rumor and innuendo out there. They're like, he's dealing with some health stuff right now, and that was it. And you didn't hear much. And then at Big 12 Media Days, Deion was asked about, hey, how you feeling? How's your health? And he's like, I'm here, I'm good. And he didn't want to elaborate at all.
Yeah, anyone who tried to ask him for details on what he's been going through, he didn't quite scold them, but he definitely rebuked them and say, hey, well, that's not what I'm here for. So, and yet today he wants to only hold a press conference about that.
And maybe this is something that needed to be done for like the Board of Trustees in Colorado. Maybe this is
maybe it's someone else saying you need to tell everyone what's going on because it's become from their perspective, it's become too much of a distraction, and you rebuking people for asking about details is not helping. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
I mean, to me, and I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here, but it feels like it's laying the groundwork to say, hey, there's a real reason why he's not going to coach. Or there's like
that typically is the thing that leads the press conference, though. So maybe that's coming later. I don't know.
And that's maybe that decision hasn't been made.
Yeah.
But maybe what they're doing is they're like pre-damage controlling right now, where they're saying, hey, you got to let people know how severe this is because we have downplayed Deion's health issues in the past. Losing toes became kind of a punchline for people, like, oh man. But like that's still a serious thing. If you have a blood clot issue, if you have a circulatory issue, that is bad enough that they have to take part of your body off.
Yeah, a toe is not as bad as like
an arm,
an arm or a leg because of we all know we all have heard of people, or maybe we know people in our personal lives that for whatever reason had to lose an entire limb, right? A toe's not as bad as that, but it's still like obviously the thing that led to the amputation of even a toe or a finger. It's serious enough they had to amputate something. So yeah, it's definitely something that didn't seem very serious, but Deion's been through it. It sounds like OC since that point for sure, and to hear that he had bladder cancer, like. Condolences, first of all, for that's awful news, but also congratulations to he and his family for now him saying he's beaten this. I don't know why a press conference was necessary, but your speculation about maybe someone else is telling him at the university, maybe someone at the university board of trustees is telling him he had to do this. Even then, I'm like, why not just put out a statement? I don't know why you need a press conference. It's very strange.
It's a little confusing, if I'm being honest.
Because,
I mean, while we are all glad that the announcement is he is cancer-free.
Yes.
There was not an announcement like, hey, I have cancer.
Right. And maybe if there was a statement and he's like, okay, we want to make this bigger, this follow-up a lot bigger, do a press conference. But like there was no, you're right. It doesn't seem... For us publicly, there's not a clear reason why this had to be done this way.
I don't know if I'm a Colorado fan if I'm a Colorado player, on the football side, I'm looking at this and I'm just going like, what is this telling me? Like, what is the quiet part that is not being said out loud? That we're about to have an Urban Meyer pulled on us? That, hey, I have health issues that have been plaguing me, and I'll remember I had a press conference about how I had cancer, and so I just, man, it just feels like there's some puppet strings being pulled here that I can't quite put my finger on the where and the why, because, again, I feel a little bit slimy, not just saying, oh, great, someone who had cancer no longer has cancer. That's what we should be celebrating. That's wonderful. But it's also like, the sports media person in me goes, where did this need for a press conference come from? And it could be as simple as, remember, this is a man who signed a $50 million contract extension from a school that has never paid anything close to that for a head football coach. I mean, Colorado in its national championship years in the early 90s was not paying their coach anywhere near the top of the sort of pecking order. Now, I would love to know, maybe we can look it up, who the highest paid coach was in 1991 and what that salary looked like, because now it's, these guys are making $13 million a year. It wasn't anything close to that. But maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's as simple as the people that are helping to fund the Deion Sanders project and experiment at the University of Colorado have been worried that, like, hey, man, this guy is not healthy. He's not around the team as much as he should be. His job is being affected by his health. We need to know what's going on. It could be as simple as that. You answer everyone's question at once. You tell them all, hey, I had cancer. Now I don't. And without listening live, because, of course, it's happening concurrently to this conversation, I'm not able to tell you whether or not Deion is giving us real, solid, concrete evidence that he has thought about stepping down, or that he may have to step down if his health continues to be problematic, although cancer-free would suggest that that's not something to worry about. This from Yahoo Sports. This is actually intense. A quote from Deion and Yahoo Sports, I think, big enough outlet that we could probably just go with it. He actually said this. Yesterday was tough because I had to make a will. It's not easy at all to think you may not be here. Okay?
Yeah, it's heavy.
But again, you're cancer-free and you're talking about yesterday you made a will? I'm confused.
Maybe it was just this was such a scare. And listen, I unfortunately had family members who had cancer, passed from cancer, and like the first time you go in remission is not necessarily the end of your cancer journey, unfortunately. Sure. So maybe that if you take that context, he's probably been told that multiple times. And so maybe even though he's technically in remission now, he's taken the opportunity to be like, I'm in remission for now. In the event that it returns, I want to have this prepared. I want to have these steps done, including a will made. That could be the context around it, but it is, without explaining that, it is like I can see why someone would have that reaction. And without explaining that, we don't know if his doctors are like, no, this isn't coming back, because sometimes they can say that pretty definitively, right? So it's just an interesting thing to have a press conference about this if there's not another shoe to drop, is what you're saying, OC.
And by the way, there is also, I guess, the more positive slant you can put on it, like that not somebody in authority was like, hey, I need these answers, and so that inspired it. Deion is telling people, don't be afraid to go to the doctor and get checked out. I'm cured. I'm here. I'm healthy. I'm cancer-free because I got checked out. This could be nothing more than Deion says, I need to do a public service announcement for all the people that are worried about their health, they're worried about going to the doctor. It could just be that. It could just be him saying, look what these doctors can do for you if you go seek treatment. It is a little outside the box. And so And obviously if Deion sat down and did a press conference about what he had for breakfast this morning, we would listen.
Yeah.
I would listen. I'd be like, okay, well, Deion, he likes the strawberry Pop-Tarts more than the cherry? Weird. And so it
those
could
gall darn cherry Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, the darn cherry Pop-Tarts don't do it for me.
Dembo junk.
Which, by the way, we're gonna have to do start bench cut on Pop-Tart flavors.
We are gonna have to do that. Absolutely.
They're good. I love Pop-Tarts.
But I will say this too. He did the whole PSA. I want to do a PSA angle is probably valid too, because he is specifically said African American men, please go get checked out. And as a prominent African American man, he knows that a lot of people in that community don't necessarily do that. And it's not just that community. It's a lot of men that don't do that. But he's taken the opportunity to say, hey, people like me, I know you don't like to go to the doctor for various reasons. There's trust issues. There's other reasons besides trust issues. Like, stop putting it off. It saved my life. Which I think if that was the purpose behind all of this, then I'm not questioning that he shouldn't have a press conference for that, especially if he wants to use his platform to spread some good like that. It's just maybe tell us that's all this is for. Don't have sources who tell media members that there's going to be a retirement announcement with this. And then we're all watching to see this retirement announcement, and all it is you announcing that you're cancer-free, which, again, great announcement, but maybe be upfront about what the press conference is for.
Well,
I don't know.
So but here's the thing. To be fair to Deion, and a very astute text coming in on the text line says, when has Deion ever done anything normal?
That's a good point.
And to be fair to Deion, right?
Nothing's typical with him as a coach.
Just the idea that, we were going to take this and infer, okay, the announcement said, hey, there's going to be a press conference for Deion and his medical team with a health update. That's what this is. That's exactly it. The inference came as well, why would you do that if it wasn't going to be something major? And the answer to that question is, well, because you're Deion. That's why. That's why you're doing it, because you're Deion. And hopefully for the reason that we just mentioned, that he's trying to encourage people to go get health screenings and things like that. And by the way, that's good enough for me, Coach Prime. It really is.
Yeah, that's a good enough reason to that's a great way to use your massive platform. It absolutely is. I applaud him for that. If that's truly what all this was. By the way, I'm not seeing any, and I didn't hear it. In the press conference, I did join it a couple minutes late, so maybe they said it right at the beginning. I missed it. I'm not seeing any quotes on Twitter. It doesn't sound like you are. But Grok, the Twitter AI, is saying he confirmed he'll continue coaching the Colorado Buffaloes in 2025.
Okay, well, there it is. That's all I need to know.
I don't know what that. You assume that Grok is getting that from somebody who said that, but we don't know.
I cannot tell you how much I hate that we are listening.
I know
to
we're using Grok as a confirmation of news.
We're using our AI overlords to tell us whether or not Deion is going to coach at Colorado. My assumption is that the gathered media, someone raised a hand and said, so congratulations on being cancer-free. Does this mean you're going to coach the whole season in 2025? And he would have found some creative quote to answer that, I would imagine.
It's just weird that when you search Deion and when you look at verified college football insiders, none of them have tweeted he will coach in 2025. It's very strange.
Dennis Dodd, Pete Thamel, Adam Rittenberg, can you give us some knowledge here?
If he did indeed say, I'm good to coach in enough of a way that an AI like Grok would be able to say he confirmed it, then how come none of the human college football insiders whose job it is to give us these quotes and write these stories, there's not a quote there to be found, even a paraphrased quote to be found, which again we learned is not a verbatim quote. Remember people, speaking of PSAs, when you paraphrase, you don't put quotation marks.
Don't put quotation marks. And by the way, AI, I don't know what the rules are about AI putting quotation marks, but I want them
Yeah, we need them to know that too.
what AI, I don't know what your pronouns are, but I want AI to know that you're not allowed to use quotation marks. Grok.
Well, I believe Allen Iverson is he, him. Oh, sorry, you're artificial intelligence. My bad.
Got it. Oh, well, this really got off the rails. All right. Look, I asked the question that is, yay, hooray, we're happy that Deion is cancer-free, genuinely so. The conference is better if he's coaching the University of Colorado. It's far more interesting if Deion's on the sideline for Colorado this year. So let's just run with that. That's the case, and we're pleased about it. I asked the question of who your breakout stars are going to be. The answers have come flooding in. So 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. Tell me your offensive and defensive breakout stars for the University of Utah this year. We'll throw some out there. We'll debate the validity of such claims.
We'll see what Grok thinks.
Grok, you know what we'll do? We'll see what Gronk thinks. I don't want to hear from Grok, but I do want to hear what Rob Gronkowski thinks about Utah football.
I'm sorry, is it G-Rock?
I don't know. Sean O'Connell Show just getting started on a Monday. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. The phone number is 877-353-0700. At Real OC Sports on Twitter. Hopefully you're watching on ESPN 700 Sports Utah on YouTube or on the ESPN 700 app that I'm sure you downloaded on your phone a long time ago because you are a dedicated fan of the show.
Yeah,
Big Willie's brings you the show every day. Utah's Sports Bar, 1717 South Main. Craft food, craft cocktails, and they've got every sporting event you could possibly imagine, an incredible pool hall, all the things you need to enjoy the upcoming football season and even baseball. That's the only real thing happening right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're watching the Deion Sanders press conference on YouTube, you can probably go away from that because I think they've said all of the substantive things that they're going to say, and you can watch us. So we're the best thing on YouTube right now, not anything else. Yeah.
So I asked the question because I want all of us to be on record before Kyle Whittingham starts to drop his little nuggets and give the Easter egg of like, hey, man, watch out for this so-and-so on our roster this year. It's one of the things that we love about having conversations with Kyle Whittingham at fall camp. The questions are the same, people, every time. Coach, how'd practice go today? How's the offense coming along? Who stood out to you at practice? The late, great Dirk Facer was always the guy that got that one in. Shout out, Dirk. Miss you, man. The late, great Dirk Facer would always get Kyle Whittingham to say, oh, yeah, who stood out today? Well, and then he would give you 5 or 6 names. And that, of course, shapes the expectation and the opinion of the fan base in a certain way. We had that in spring. I'm asking, who do you think is going to be the breakout star on offense and on defense? 877-353-0700. 7516, if you're listening still. You and I are on the same page. We'll get to that one here in just a second. I got to scroll down. Luca Caldarella breakout at wide receiver has come in from a couple of different people. I hope you are right. And you know why I hope you are right? Because Luca Caldarella is the embodiment of the hardworking player who does the less glamorous thing and hopefully earns his way into the more glamorous thing. No block, no rock, as they like to say, to wide receivers. He has been all block, no rock in his career. Luca Caldarella was a guy that last year, if he was on the field and in motion, you knew it was going to be a run play. He's the best blocking wide receiver on the team last year. He probably still is the best blocking wide receiver on the team. And they would motion him, and you knew that they weren't going to throw him the ball. It was going to be a run play because Luca Caldarella was there. That's not what wide receivers want, okay? And the thing is, he did it seemingly without complaint. Good body language on the sideline. Didn't appear to be locker room lawyering. Just a guy that would go out there and do what he was supposed to do. As a wide receiver, it was like playing for my high school team. Our wide receivers got a catch apiece every game. That's it. We ran the veer offense. Their whole job was to block corners. You know how bad that would suck as a wide receiver? But Luca Caldarella has done it seemingly without any real issue.
Hey, but that veer offense, it's like Novocaine. Just give it time, always works, OC.
Luca Caldarella played in 12 games for the University of Utah last year. James Peterson, how many catches did Luca Caldarella have for the University of Utah playing in all 12 games in 2024? How many catches?
2?
Correct.
Hey!
2 catches.
I knew that.
If you get the yardage right, 2 catches for how many yards?
12 yards.
Okay, 26 yards.
How
dare you
I put it in half.
How dare you underestimate our guy? All right?
All right.
Luca Caldarella,
Not
man.
bad, Luca. The other Luca.
I desperately hope you are right. When there are several people. We've got 3 or 4 people now that have said Luca is going to be the guy.
Bunch of Landon King. Oh, wait. Sorry.
That
was last season.
Don't do that.
in the year before that.
Why are you doing that? That was mean. Kind of funny, but also
I think
mean.
so. I think I've got my offensive breakout player narrowed down. I still probably need a little bit more time to think about the defensive one, OC, but mine would be Hunter Andrews.
Okay.
I think now you got to take everything with a whole lot of salt in spring, in the scrimmages that we're able to see, the 20-minute Hunter Andrews.
And Hunter Andrews is what I can surmise is that this coaching staff, Kyle Whittingham, has had really kind of like the entirety of his tenure. He's had a guy that is a little bit positionless offensively. Sometimes it's the defensive player that they bring over and have him be the positionless player, the Sione Vaki, the Eric Weddle, the whatever. But there's, Brant Keithy is the most recent example of this, where it's kind of like, yes, you're listed on the depth chart on the roster as a tight end, but what you really are is you're a weapon. And Brant Keithy famously wanted to be identified as an offensive weapon. He pulled the Jimmy Graham. We're just like, don't call me a tight end. Call me what I am, offensive weapon.
To the point where his open, if you all remember, of the Brant Keithy interview with Bill Riley on the Bill Riley show it joked, is he a tight end? He's a offensive weapon.
Yeah.
Like, so to that point, that's how much he wanted to be known as that. And when he was healthy, he certainly was.
So Hunter Andrews can be exactly that. He's a guy that was, honestly, if he was not a white person, he would have been recruited as a running back to pretty much every school in the country.
Yeah, because of his size and because of how he just ran over people at that position in high school, right?
Incredible production in Texas high school football, right? There's still these biases that we have at the college level, and so everyone was like, okay, you're going to be a linebacker for us, which, by the way, I don't hate.
No.
When you have a guy with speed and size and a willingness to put his nose into contact, you say, yeah, you're a linebacker, dude, and there's nothing wrong with that. But University of Utah is more flush with talent at linebacker right now than they are in offensive playmakers, and he has shown some acumen there. So they're moving him back to the offensive side of the ball. He's going to be a guy who lines up on the end of the line of scrimmage, in the slot, in the backfield behind Devin Dampier, but in front of Wayshawn Parker. He'll be doing some fullbacky type stuff. They'll split him out all the way. They're going to try to create mismatches.
Maybe they even do some of the Brant Keithy package from last year where they have him do direct snaps if he shows some acumen there, although that was not a great play for Utah last season. So I'm not sure how in favor I am of a tight end direct snap, but maybe it's better. Maybe he's better at it and the line blocks better for him and all that. They execute that better than they did for Brant Keithy last year.
I want to know how good he is at throwing a ball.
Yeah.
Because that will keep defenses honest.
Yeah, that was probably why that hardly ever worked, is because they just knew, okay, he's going to take the snap and he's going to run straight forward.
So I love Hunter Andrews as the pick. He was almost my pick for the breakout offensive star here, but Dadron Zipperer is the guy for me. By the way,
we had a texter agree with you.
Yeah, before we move on to Dadron Zipperer, James, you get 5 James Peterson bonus points if you can tell me how many yards Hunter Andrews produced for the University of Utah offense last year.
Ooh. Was he okay? So was he listed as running back last year or was
Incorrect.
Linebacker?
He was a linebacker last
but
year.
he still got some time on offense. Okay. 35 yards.
Wow, you really overestimated.
5 yards.
17 yards
17
of offense.
yards.
17 yards.
So I was double what Hunter Andrews got, and I guessed only half of what Luca Calderetto got.
Two carries for 17 yards, 8.5 yards per carry for Hunter Andrews. If you go to Utah's,
of course he did.
If you look up in sportsreference.com, which is the place to find college stats, you see that every player listed on Utah's offensive stats has a position that makes sense next to their name, except for the 19th most productive yard gainer, Hunter Andrews, linebacker, University of Utah, 17 yards.
And he almost matched his otherworldly high school yards per carry, too. That's amazing.
Oh, Hunter Andrews. I love that pick. Now, Dadrin Zipperer, 11 games. How many catches did he have in 11 games, James Peterson? Don't look at your screen.
I'm not looking it up.
Don't look it up.
I'm not looking it up. 11 catches.
8 catches.
Okay.
For 122 yards.
Okay, that's the number I was going to say. Thanks for spoiling it. Jeez.
Okay. That's 15 yards per catch. How many touchdowns did he score?
I don't think he scored a touchdown, did he?
That's also correct.
Okay.
James Peterson.
Let's go.
You're getting a lot of James Peterson
Let's
bonus
go.
points today.
I live for these bonus points. You know this.
Dadrin Zipperer is a guy that we saw, again, that's what the breakout star is all about for me, right? It's these little Easter eggs, these little like, whoa, did you see that? Did you see the acceleration? Did you see the separation? Did you see that catch? Did you see the wiggle? Dadrin Zipperer is a guy that, first of all, has the physical profile that this offense is a little bit more used to dealing with, meaning coaches who came at he's not this massive dude, right? So they're going to find the little seams. They're going to find the little spaces between safety and linebacker coverage, and that's where they're going to put Dadrin Zipperer in the route tree, and they're going to give him the ball and try to make him beat one man and get him in the end zone. Part of that is maybe wishful thinking for me that Utah has a wide receiver actually emerge as a star this year. That's one that it's massively important because Devin Dampier, awesome with his legs. Wayshawn Parker, I think, special talent. Hunter Andrews, we just talked about, is going to be able to create some rushing threats. The problem is, no matter how good your offensive line is, no matter how good the skill players are that run the ball for you, if you can't keep a team honest and you have an 8-man box every single play or a 9-man box with a corner blitzing off the edge because they know you're going to run right into the teeth of it, then even that great offensive line is not going to end up looking that great. It's just a numbers thing, right? There's 5 offensive linemen. You can't ask them to block 8 dudes. You can't ask your running back to make 2 and 3 dudes miss instead of 1 or 2 dudes miss to get to the second level. It becomes a math equation if you can't keep teams honest by having a Dadrin Zipperer or an Otto Tia or a Creed Whittemore or a whatever break out and be something that the other team has to worry about. And it's not only on them, of course. The quarterback has to be capable of delivering the ball. That was an issue for Utah last year, but I don't think that's an issue this year.
You also spoke about someone you left out as another guy who can potentially wreak havoc in the running game. And maybe you didn't leave him out, maybe I just missed it, but Nate Johnson is a guy in the athlete position who's getting a lot of love on the text line as a breakout offensive player. He's another guy that you can put alongside Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker and possibly Hunter Andrews, who could be a big part of this run game in wildcat formations or whatever other as a running back, however other ways Jason Beck decides to utilize him.
Fingers crossed that we're giving you 2 or 3 names and that midway through the season, there's like 7 we can say, is he the breakout star this year? Or is it him? Is it Hunter Andrews? Or is it Dadrin Zipperer? Or is it Nate Johnson, who we're so familiar with but has never really broken out anywhere, and now he's in the right spot to use his athleticism, and look what is happening. That's my hope.
That's a guy. Now, when we talked about when they decided to use Brant Keithy in the Wildcat last year and how it wasn't very effective because everyone knew he wasn't going to try to throw the ball, right? Nate Johnson, that's a potentially dangerous package because we know maybe he's not an accurate enough thrower to be a starting quarterback, but he certainly can throw it couple plays a game that you do this Wildcat and keep defenses honest, especially if you're scheming something like that where you're going to get a wide open guy. So that could be potentially dangerous. I am a little disappointed that they didn't try that with Jaquindon Jackson in 2023, the last year of the Pac-12. The first year that we expected Cam Rising to come back from injury, and it just didn't happen, right? And they went to the Sione Vaki Wildcat package. I'm like, why not? And they even went to Jaquindon Jackson playing quarterback in Wildcat, but they never had him throw the ball, even though he initially started his career as a quarterback, So it makes me think now, new offensive coordinator, so things could be done differently, but it makes me think maybe we won't see enough of Nate Johnson throwing the ball in trick play situations, but I would like to see plenty of it, because this is a guy who is a quarterback who you've moved to play more of the athlete position that they're calling it.
All right. Got to take a quick one here. We've talked about what we might see as an offensive breakout player. Let's focus on the defensive side of the ball, because even though we have more trust in the defense year in, year out at the University of Utah, this is still a question. Who's it going to be in 2025? You can't say Lander Barton. You can't say Smith Snowden. You can't say Teo Johnson. Pretty much everyone else on this defense, even though Logan Fano's a little bit more established in terms of a talent, he hasn't had a breakout year yet because he hasn't been healthy enough to have a breakout year yet. So who's your defensive breakout player? Again, it's 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports on Twitter. And make sure you're listening on the app if you don't have other ways, like, I don't know, your boss doesn't like it when you're sitting with us on your laptop computer, or you're not driving around right now. ESPN 700 Sports app is available wherever you can download your apps. Sean O'Connell Show continues with the defensive breakout star predictions next on ESPN 700. All right, this counts as your hot lunch today. Reminder for you, if you're looking for a hot lunch, go to Big Willie's at 1717 South Main. Check out the craft cocktails, and more importantly for the hot lunch, the craft food menu. Incredible stuff. A broad range. Even if you're looking to stay lean and trim and healthy and in that summer bod for a little while longer, great salads. They gave us the grilled steak salad last week. The jalapeno cilantro dressing is perfect. Just the teeniest amount of spice, but mostly creamy. Woo! Good stuff. All right, Defensive Player of the Year predictions. Breakout players for this University of Utah football team. I'm asking the question today before we hear from Kyle Whittingham at camp. Fall camp media availability starts this week. And, I don't want us to be led by the witness. I don't want Kyle Whittingham to be the one who's just like, yeah, this is the guy who's playing best right now. I want you to predict for me. So, James, predict for me. What do you got?
Dallas Vakalahi. And I'm saying that because he is a guy that's been talked about. He played well last year in more of a limited role. He's a younger player. He's a guy that's been talked about by other people as a potential breakout guy. I agree with them. But also because they really need a breakout guy at defensive tackle, right? That's one of the holes in this roster, and maybe we see it's just a perception hole because there's not as much experience and because of who they just lost, and namely Junior Tafuna to the NFL. But it really feels like a position of need, so that I'm going to go with Dallas Vakalahi because they really need it from him and because he's gotten some shine.
Dallas is, and by the way, you're allowed to pick Dallas Vakalahi, but he is right on the borderline of who is allowed even to be a breakout player because he almost had a breakout year last year.
It's true. He did get enough time that you could say he at least burst on the scene. Maybe he's not quite a breakout, but yeah. You're
still allowed the Dallas Vakalahi pick because he played incredibly well last year ahead of schedule. This coaching staff did not want to have true freshman Dallas Vakalahi playing that many snaps in 9 games last year. They didn't. They wanted it to be Keanu Tanuvasa and Junior Tafuna with the rotation of Aliki Vimahi, who is back. All 3 of those guys got injured. Aliki got injured badly, and the other 2 were injured enough throughout the year that it became problematic, and you had to bring in somebody younger. You had to bring in somebody new. And that ended up being Dallas Vakalahi, who had a great season. Oh, by the way, also Samote Pepa got hurt a bunch last year. He only played in 9 games. So,
yeah, that was supposed to be such a position of depth for Utah. As you rattle off all those names, yeah, there's no way they planned on Dallas playing as much as they did last year, the coaching staff.
They did not have a single defensive tackle of any import play in more than 10 games. They didn't have anyone play the whole season.
Just injury ravaged as many of the position groups were, but that one was about as injury ravaged as any of them on the team.
Tavita Fotu played 3 games. Aliki Vimahi played 4 games. Samote Pepa played 9 games. Thank goodness that Dallas Vakalahi was ready to play ahead of schedule. He played 9 games. Keanu Tanuvasa played 7 games for the University of Utah last year, and Junior Tafuna played 10, and only about 3 of those was he anywhere near full health. Don't even get me started on the edges. Okay, so Dallas Vakalahi, I like it. Jonah Lea'ea, by the way, is a guy that is this year's Dallas Vakalahi. Okay? Didn't know his name before the season started for most people, and all of a sudden he's going to start making plays. You're going to be like, who's this kid? The coaching staff has been really high on Jonah Lea'ea for a couple of years now, but he's not big enough. He hasn't been big enough until now to really be even close to an every down defensive tackle.
Is that your pick then?
No, I'm just jumping. I'm piggybacking on the interior defensive line thing.
By the way, you brought up public enemy number 1, Tanuvasa. I left him out of who they lost because just strategically there,
Yeah,
but
it's fine.
you said
Hey,
the quiet part out loud.
I'm not-
Obviously, a huge loss too.
I'm not afraid of the fact that Utah lost Keanu Tanavasa. I know it hurts, but like this is not something that any team in America is immune from.
It's true.
There's not a single team.
It's a tough lesson Utah fans have just learned. Yeah,
especially in the Big 12, right? I mean, like Ohio State is probably mostly safe. Oregon is probably mostly safe. Georgia and Alabama. But, like, when you talk about anyone who is not a deep, dyed-in-the-wool blue blood, every team in America is going to lose somebody they don't want to lose to a transfer portal. Now, in most cases, that guy's not going to go to your hated in-state rival, and it's not going to be rubbed in your nose with, like, religious undertones in 99.9% of cases. But still, you're not immune from it if you're anybody, if you're any team. And Keanu Tanavasa is a great player, but Keanu Tanavasa gave you 7 games last year. It's not the right way. The correct way to say it is not part of the problem, but he was not an outlier in terms of health or anything like that. So some of the same issues you had with every other player on this team, you had with Keanu Tanavasa as well. So I think you're going to be able to compensate for that loss. I really do. The breakout player for me, this is just as much of a hopeful and wishful thought as it is something I'm actually stern and deeply believing. John Henry Daly, the BYU transfer as a pass rusher.
JHD, yeah.
Old JHD.
Jahud.
So, again, this is a guy that as a freshman was on that BYU football team, and the coaches at BYU were like, oh, my gosh, he's going to be unbelievable. But there were some issues in terms of how well he fit in with that locker room. There were some issues in terms of his brother was on the team, and he as the freshman was being given a little bit more run than the older brother. And that created a little bit of an issue, it seems. And so BYU just was not the place for John Henry Daly, all right? So he transferred up, and you could have used him last year. He, like everyone else, got banged up, wasn't able to go last year. But John Henry Daly is a dude. That's a guy. It's an in-state recruit that could end up being, like, hopefully a 6+ sack kind of individual. And by the way, I want to say double-digit sack, but you didn't have one of those last year. So then to take the leap and say you're definitely going to have one this year with a bunch of under-established talents seems like a silly thing to do. The lower-hanging fruit is Logan Fano, who's, when healthy, the more explosive, perhaps the most explosive rusher they have on this team. But I wanted to shine a little light on John Henry Daly because of, the upside, the potential of what that guy could be if he's really found his place at Utah, happy, healthy, etc. The potential is unlimited for a kid like that.
Yeah, one of our texters agrees with you. He says he thinks I think he plays a critical role in the pass rush this year. Someone else that just came in as you were talking about that, Paul Fitzgerald, in the same room, another guy who came in very highly touted as a transfer and unfortunately did not have much of an impact last year. I think that's a good pick too for a breakout star in the pass rush.
Look, you kind of need all of them to have some kind of an impact because you have to have a pass rush this year. The Big 12 is different than the Pac-12 was, and the quarterbacks are just better and better and better every year at getting the ball out quickly. I think we're probably never going to see another Nate Orchard season, no matter how good of a pass rusher you have. You're not going to have anyone, pushing 20 sacks in a single year, I don't think.
Unless they make an absurd rule that says you have to hold the ball for at least 5 seconds.
Yeah,
that's probably not happening.
I don't think that's going to happen, but do you know who the leading pass rusher, the leading sack man on Utah's football team was last year, in hindsight, James?
It was not Logan Fano?
Nope.
Man. Was it Tafuna? Or Tanavasa?
It was Van Fillinger.
Oh, Van, of course. He was leading the nation for the first part of the season.
And by the way, he got all of those in the first 4 games of the year.
Yeah, that was – so he didn't get a sack after the first after week 4 then?
He had 6 sacks, and then just you know, like again, my whole approach to the Van Fillinger picture has changed pretty drastically in the last 18 months or so, because he was a guy that just couldn't stay healthy but played anyway.
Yeah.
Where other people would have been like, I can't play, he continued to play even in bad seasons, disappointing seasons. He continued to play, and last year was more of that. He ended up playing 10 of the 12 games that Utah played, and he had 6 sacks, and the bulk of his production happened early in the year when he was fresh and healthy. And then it started to, you know, the bumps and bruises started to accumulate. He didn't sit out until very, very late, but he had 6 sacks, and that was, I mean, that's a solid year, but that's not the year you want from your best pass rusher on a Utah defense. You got to get more than that. Whoever it is this year, I don't care if it's John Henry Daly or if it's Paul Fitzgerald or if it's Logan Fano or if it's Cash Dillon or if it's somebody we've barely seen on the field yet.
One of these defensive tackles even, like, somebody's got to get
I don't care.
8 to 10
I don't care if
sacks,
it's I don't care
more.
if it's Lander Barton bending the edge and they're just like, dude, we're preparing you for the next level. They're going to make you do this. Remember how they did it with Devin Lloyd? They're just like, oh, look, turns out this guy can pass rush. Maybe they figure that out with Landon this year. Although probably not, because they're going to use his specialties in offense instead. You got to have your leading sack man for Utah this year has to have more than 6 sacks.
Oh yeah, where's the love text line for Lander Barton, offensive breakout player of the year?
That's no. No. 3797 did say Paul Fitzgerald, as you mentioned. And look, Rabbit Evans, his name has come in. Be great to see Jonnu Hall, as I mentioned earlier. His name has come in.
Is Rabbit like Vakalahi, where it's like he's just on the edge of what you can call a breakout player? Because he played a ton last year and was really effective last year.
Yeah, and I think he is right on that edge. I think he established himself last year. And if you want to talk about like breakout year, if he becomes like an all-conference player this year, that's a breakout year for him. Guys like Teo Johnson also established themselves last year, but people are like, that dude he's going to be a draft pick.
I would say he established himself the year before, and then last year was the breakout. Yeah.
He was the second leading tackler on the team last year when we're talking about Teo Johnson. So offensive and defensive breakout players for this Utah football team.
Special teams next? Is that where we're going?
The long snapper. No, we're not going to do special teams. There's not enough meat on that bone. But
coaching staff breakout?
You know what's really interesting is nobody said, no answer that I've seen come in either via Twitter or the text line has mentioned a corner. Because everyone's like, yeah, Smith Snowden's going to be good. And what else? Like, don't we need that? I don't know.
I mean, is Scooby a guy that I think he would probably be on that line of maybe he broke out last year, maybe he just did enough to establish himself and he breaks out this year. He might be a guy you say could be the breakout player in that room if you believe he didn't already break out last year.
Fingers crossed. In any case, that you have your breakout stars on both offense and defense. And if I'm wrong about the names I gave or you're wrong about the names you gave, at the end of the day, all you want is to see somebody making plays. So we're all in the same boat on that one. 877-353-0700 if you want to keep throwing them at us. At Real OC Sports on Twitter as well. All right. One guy that I disqualified, you cannot be on the breakout stars list if you're already established even in another league, because that's the new realm of college football. That's how it looks now. But Devin Dampier getting a little bit of extra love. We got some junk mail about this. I'll tell you what I mean next on the Sean O'Connell Show. Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, keep your breakout player predictions coming in at ESPN 792.1 FM at Real OC Sports or 877-353-0700. Preseason award watch lists. These things are sometimes great and most of the time a little silly. But I never think it's silly when a Ute is named. Little recognition goes a long way. Having your name just on the radar for people in the national media especially is a good thing. They might pay a little bit closer attention to your highlights. And then if they pay a little bit closer attention to the highlights, they might be a little bit more likely to tune in and watch a game. And if you're getting multiple people that are ready to tune in and watch a game, then all of a sudden your reputation as a team and as a program grows. And while you're probably never going to close the gap in any kind of significant way between you and, the true blue bloods, you can become that what Utah has been and hopefully still is kind of that top of a second tier kind of a program. Devin Dampier, the new quarterback for the University of Utah, has been named to the Maxwell Award watch list, according to the Maxwell Football Club. The Maxwell Award has been presented to the College Football Player of the Year since 1937 and is named in honor of Robert Tiny Maxwell, who is a former standout at
Rutgers.
Swarthmore College. Of course. Renowned sports writer and a football official. I cannot tell you how many times I have mentioned the Maxwell Award without knowing.
Oh, you didn't know anything about Tiny Maxwell?
I didn't know anything about Tiny Maxwell.
I only recently learned about him because of a great book I discovered called Gridiron Legacy.
Okay.
OC. This was an interview opportunity like Basketball Stars with Chris Navalta last week. We get some of the little inside baseball here. We, as media members, we get these emails from publishers that say, "Hey, there's this book coming out. If you can interview the author if you'd like. They'll give you a free media copy to review." So that was one of them. You ignore most of them, but that was one that I'm like, I'm actually interested in this book. Let me jump on this and give it a read. It's the story of the unknown beginnings of American football before the NFL started in 1920, well before that. And Tiny Maxwell was on one of these teams in Pittsburgh, that one of the first pro teams in Pittsburgh. So that's, I knew nothing about the Maxwell, the man behind the Maxwell Award until I read about that. So you're not alone.
Swarthmore College.
Swarthmore
is
the powerhouse
in Pennsylvania. So
the powerhouse in the 1890s, no doubt.
Devin Dampier, just to get you excited one more time, 3,934 total yards of offense, 2,768 through the air, 1,166 rushing, 7.52 yards per carry, 19 touchdowns. First New Mexico quarterback to ever eclipse 1,000 yards rushing, and he had 6 100-yard games in 2024.
He told you guys at Media Day, OC, going for 6,000 or 7,000
he wants
all-purpose yards this year.
He says if this offense can be a 6,000-yard offense. Now, that's not an unreasonable thing for a quarterback like him to ask. If he's like, well, I figure I can give them 4,000 yards. They just got to find a running back or 2 or 3 that can add in another 2,000 for me. Now, 6,000 yards, that's not where I'm setting the bar. We're actually going to do overs and unders for our Utah football stat predictions as well. And I'm not going to – I promise you I'm not going to set it at 6,000. That is the lofty goal. But having in mind, where he can – I mean, if you're Devin Dampier, it makes sense to sit back and be like, okay, in a perfect world, I was able to generate 3,900 yards behind a pretty average offensive line. I know that I have a really good offensive line here. I know that my receivers are better here. I know that my running backs should be better here. So let's say that not only can I do a little bit more offensively because every player wants to improve, not only can I do a little bit more and I can take care of the ball a little bit better, so maybe I'm responsible for like 4,300 yards this year instead of 3,900 yards this year. Maybe I can get a running back who's in the 1,000-yard category with me. And then we have, you go thunder and lightning and then, hail. And you have another running back who's giving you a few hundred yards, another 400, 500, 600 yards. And now you're really pushing close to that 6,000-yard total. If you got a quarterback who through the air and with his legs gives you 4,000 plus, and then a running back who can push 1,000, and then you just have everyone else fill it in. Fly sweeps, that third string running back, that third option rushing, right? Hunter Andrews has a bunch of yards. I don't know, man. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And by the way, if it happens, you're talking about Utah being in a conference championship game. If Utah ends up producing 4,500 plus yards as a total offense this year, they're having a much better season than what you saw last year. If they're 5,000 yards plus as an offense, now you're talking about them being one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the conference. Definitively, if this is a 6,000-yard offense, that team is in the conference championship game, to say the very least. Will it happen? Only one way to find out. We'll see. Let them play. But the Maxwell Award Committee has given Devin Dampier the little nod in the preseason, which now brings his preseason award list appearances to 2, I guess. Newcomer of the year in the Big 12 Conference. And now Maxwell Award watch list.
Maxwell Award, as you read, by the way, the second most prestigious award to the Heisman Trophy for an individual player is like at the other National Player of the Year award. So that's quite the watch list to be on. Although you and I have both said on record as saying watch lists are silly.
Watch lists are pretty silly.
It's still he should consider it an honor for that award to be saying we are watching him as one of our National Player of the Year candidates for our award.
The watch list thing gets really ridiculous because I don't have the full list in front of me right now, the Maxwell Award watch list in front of me right now.
There's probably like 50 names.
I will find it, and it will be at least 36 names and probably much more. I don't remember what year it was, but, the Remington Award is for centers, and we brought it. It was when I was doing a show with Jeff Schwartz on Pac-12 Radio, and I was like, oh, so-and-so from Oregon is on the Remington Award list. And he's just like, don't care. I was like, what do you mean? That's an offensive line award.
That's your guy.
I would think that you would care about
That's
something
your
like
guy
that.
at your college.
And he goes, I think every starting center in the country is on that list. And I was like, that can't be true. I looked it up, James. It literally was every returning starter. There were 70 names.
Oh, my gosh.
At center. There were more teams with a center listed on the Remington Award watch list than not.
So Jeff, remind me, was Jeff a center?
No.
He was somewhere else on the line.
He played tackle in college and guard in the NFL.
Oh, okay.
And
well, that's why he didn't care. I don't care about centers.
Centers are the best ones. They're the ones that actually have to tell everyone what to do. In any case, I'll give you the actual number of max. I don't want to downplay that it's cool, right? It's a little bit of an honor, but the watch lists do get a little bit out of hand this time of year. So we'll see how many names are actually on that Maxwell Award watch list. And how many of them are in the Big 12? Because I could name off the top of my head, there's at least 3 more.
Yeah. It's gonna be almost every starting quarterback in the Power 4, right? At least of the teams that are supposed to be good in each Power 4 conference. So you're looking at least 3 to 5 in the Big 12 that'll be on it.
Okay, so I just Googled Maxwell Award watch list, and so far, Southern Miss's quarterback, Florida State's quarterback, Illinois' quarterback, Arizona State's quarterback, Auburn's quarterback, Georgia's quarterback. There's a lot of guys.
Yeah, and then there's going to be, since it's Player of the Year, it's not a quarterback only award. You're going to see like Jeremiah Smith's probably on there from Ohio State, guys like that too.
ACC leads the nation with 17 players named to Maxwell Award watch list. Yeah, well, all we know is our guys on it, and that's what matters.
Yeah,
okay, kids?
The most important of the watch list invitees, or I don't know what you call it, watch list honorees.
I got to get a real number. Shocking. Arch Manning also on the list.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, upset if he wins.
Okay, imagine if you are Arkansas State wide receiver Corey Rucker, and you're on this list. You're like, cool. And then you see like, oh, Arch Manning is also on this list. Jeremiah Smith is also on this list. I'm not winning this award.
I know. Devin Dampier's also on this list.
It's like I was nominated last year. I was one of the nominees for like whatever it was, the broadcaster of the year in the World MMA Awards.
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful. That's really cool." And then I saw the other people on the list, and they're all just like legends. And I'm like, I am definitely not. It's that old Sesame Street game. One of these things is not like the other. That's how most of these people on the list are feeling.
You can do the Dan Patrick shtick. Award nominated play-by-play man for the PFL. Sean O'Connell.
Yes. Award nominated is good enough for me. All right. Is Nick Saban going to be back in coaching? Last week, the rumors started to circulate. I got to tell you, I really hope Nick Saban never comes back to coaching. I'll tell you why next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 792 on FM. All right, well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk. You probably saw this a little bit last week. Nick Saban, there was some rumor and innuendo swirling around his name that maybe Nick Saban was getting bored of that retired life and wanted to get back on the sideline and coach. He was asked directly about it. His response was the most perfect coach speak ever. He said, I don't see an opportunity right now that would bring me back to coaching. He left the door open by using the right now. Here's the thing. If we're talking about college football, we need for Nick Saban not to come back to coaching. His analysis on game day is incredible. His straight man to the other, like, kind of goofy antics is a perfect balance. When you bring in a comedian as a celebrity picker, when you have Pat McAfee, who thinks he's a comedian, on the set full time, it's good to have the straight man Nick Saban there. Beyond that, and this is a lot less seen and talked about when it comes to what Nick Saban is up to these days, Nick Saban is on a multitude of advisory boards around college football. So a lot of these changes that are happening so rapidly right now, and a lot of the meltdowns of old structures and the hastily constructed new things, they need guidance from someone who knows college football, somebody who understands and has understood for a long time and jumped on board with this before most teams and most programs were willing to. Nick Saban ran Alabama football like a business, like a pro team model, long before it was like the normal thing to do. And yes, I'm of the believer that Nick Saban had a financial structure in place to reward his players, probably outside the rules. Now, whether that was because or that was him looking the other way or him actually overseeing it, you would not be able to convince me otherwise that NIL, before it was legal, was still being carried out in places like Tuscaloosa. But even if that part is not true, what you need as decisions are being made hastily, not even rapidly, I'm talking hastily in college sports, what you need is someone who knows what it takes to win at the top level of college football, what it takes to build some continuity in a program, what it takes to manage the demands and the high expectations of not one star player, not two star players, but like 10 and 15 star players on a team at a time. You need Nick Saban to be lending that expertise to the overarching landscape of college football. If he gets back on the sideline somewhere, he's not doing it. Right now, he is doing that. Right now, he is taking phone calls. He is sitting on boards. He's working in advisory roles all the way up to, like, Donald Trump put out an executive order regarding our NIL. And like Nick Saban is a voice that is at least a resource for a lot of this stuff. And for him to go back to the daily grind of coaching wherever, in the NFL certainly, or more likely at a college football level, it just takes away from the, first of all, game day, college game day, which is our best American sports program. And it also takes away from the behind-the-scenes stuff that we never hear, and he's never going to get credit for. And he doesn't need credit for it because he's already the most respected college football coach in history, probably. He's the GOAT. He's at least on the Mount Rushmore if he's not the GOAT. So Nick Saban he's in the perfect retirement advisory role now. Don't pull him back onto a sideline. Leave him where he's at. Let him lend his voice and his expertise, hopefully, to just and if it's a 1% increment, because he's not going to be the major voice of change, but if just something he says, his little tidbit of wisdom, his little anecdote about when he had, I had, remember that time I had the best defense in the history of college football? Well, those guys all wanted this and that, and we had to make sure that we provided them this and that, and I told them they actually can't have that, but they can have this, and you can make that work. He's important for those reasons. And it's harder to define and it's harder to put your finger on than bringing him back to a sideline and taking a team from 4 wins to 10 wins to a national championship. But it's equally as important and probably more important right now for the landscape of college football because it is dicey and it is shaky the direction that the game is headed. He's a guy who is constantly pushed back, and it's why he retired, by the way, where he was continuing to push back even as it was inevitable. He was pushing back against the idea that you had to, in order to make it worthwhile for college athletes, that you had to pay them. And that if you were going to pay them, because remember, Nick Saban back in the day said, I'm willing to pay my athletes. In fact, you can take some of my salary if you want to pay these guys. But then he always was measured in saying, if you're going to pay them, you have to have it be within a structure, and you can't buy them. You can't pay them to come to your school. You have to reward the performance that they give you. He has always wanted NIL to be what NIL was intended to be and obviously hasn't turned out to be. And then it looked for 2 weeks like maybe it was going to be forced back into that box of what it probably should be. And then lawyers prevailed. And we talked about this last Wednesday. As strong as the efforts were to put safeguards and regulation on a system that had no safeguards and regulation, the lawyers were just like, no, you can't do that. You can't limit the earning potential of these young people now by saying that's not a legitimate business. You can't even put another roadblock in the way. You can't even make the money that they get be laundered through an official business. What you need to do is you need to just let these collectives do what they've been doing. And the lawyers won. So that's the kind of stuff. That's the sort of and you know, he probably isn't powerful enough, as powerful and as big of a voice as Nick Saban is. He probably isn't by himself going to create any super meaningful change. But when you talk about a system of checks and balances, he is the checks and the balances. He's the kind of guy, that's the kind of voice that's like, no, let's think about this before we just say, okay, you can transfer twice a year as many times as you want through your college football career.
Should we name him the head of the College Sports Commission?
Honestly,
is that what we should be doing?
If you wanted to have a college football czar, you know, when every government official is like, we got to have a czar for this.
Yeah.
You got to have a crypto czar. You got to have a healthcare czar. You got to have a border czar. If you want to talk about a college football czar, Nick Saban.
Absolutely. Or you know, if we ever finally get to some kind of centralized structure of governance for college football, commissioner, right? But I don't know that doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. We're going to have 3 to 4 leagues, maybe even 2 at some point, with 2 different commissioners. And that's the other thing that's contributing to this chaos. There's no central leadership for college football. We're assuming that Greg Sankey and is it Petiti at the Big Ten, they're the central leadership, but they're not really the central leadership because there's two other conferences in the power that we call power conferences, and there's like 6 other conferences that have commissioners too. Like we just need one, just like any other big time sports league. And Nick Saban, I think, would be pretty good with that.
Can I just point something out as we talk about college football at large? We've got a television in the studio. It's on SportsCenter or on whatever sporting event is on the day, like in daytime, 11 to 2, while we're here on air. University of Colorado football is dominating SportsCenter today. Now, Deion Sanders might be playing chess while the rest of us play checkers, James, because if you're just tuning in, Coach Prime had a press conference today to update everyone on his health. They announced it this weekend that he and the healthcare professionals around his treatment were going to have an update on Deion Sanders' health. And that led to wild speculation over the weekend. I talked to one person who has really good sources. I was not able to source it a second time, which is why I never went public with it. But there was some suggestion that Deion was going to sit down behind a microphone and announce that he was stepping away from being the head coach at the University of Colorado. There was a lot of speculation to that end, because why would you have a press conference to tell everyone you're healthy? Well, that's what they did, and that's great, and we're happy that he's healthy, right? And Deion Sanders took his opportunity and used his platform to offer a little PSA about how you should get your health checked out, and that's probably a good enough reason to have the press conference in the first place, as we talked about earlier. But also, there's no other way that on July 28th, Colorado football is the center of anyone's discussion. And now, I'm not accusing him of saying like your own health update is just a marketing tool for University of Colorado, but it certainly ain't hurting him right now.
It's a byproduct. The byproduct of him making a major health update, which the update was that he is in remission from bladder cancer. He has beat bladder cancer after having his bladder removed. That the byproduct of that announcement is that Colorado gets a bunch of attention, which, you know what? That's a savvy move by him. He had to have known that whenever I speak, he has to know whenever I speak, it's probably going to lead SportsCenter, and that's great for our program. So savvy move by them to do this, even though it didn't offer any substance as far as his coaching future. We're just assuming, because he didn't say that he's stepping down, that he's going to continue to coach Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I don't need to question the motives at this point, because I'm not going to figure it out one way or the other. But man, the byproduct, like you said, is concrete. It is definite. It is undeniable. He sits down behind a microphone, and because we don't have any games being played right now, immediately Colorado, they bust out the highlights. They bust out the conversation.
They give you last year's record. We just saw that on the graphic. 9-4, 7-2. Yeah,
they were playing Colorado football spring game footage.
The most recent game they played. OC.
It's like everyone wearing the spongy caps. Which, by the way, in 15 minutes we're going to have Chris Kamrani on, and we'll talk about how important those things are. Those ugly helmet things. If you have not read the article, I would encourage you to take the next 15 minutes to go and do so. It's in The Athletic. It's about Greg Newman, who was an interior defensive lineman for the University of Utah during the I guess you'd call it the late aughts. He was a starter on that Sugar Bowl team, and a completely undersized guy who somehow found his way into a very important role on maybe the best defense that Utah's ever fielded. And unfortunately, his life ended prematurely and in less than ideal circumstances. And Chris Kamrani of The Athletic, who's joining us in 15 minutes, wrote a really great article about it, and took a hard look at what football does, the toll that it can take on people. And we're gonna talk about the article. We're gonna talk about Greg Newman, who I knew a little bit. And we'll take some time in 15 minutes to do that. But I would say if you're on your lunch break right now, you're headed over to Big Willie's to grab a sandwich or whatever, pull out your phone, go to The Athletic, read that article, Greg Newman, Chris Kamrani, and it's a pretty easy – well, I won't say it's an easy read. It's a quick enough read. It's not an easy read. It's going to make you emotional, and it's going to make you question some things about our own love for the brutal nature of contact sports, but it's an important conversation to have, and we'll have it. Yeah,
the name of the piece, he found his place in the world through football, but CTE would lead to 15 years of suffering on The Athletic. So it really is a very heavy piece. As someone who didn't grow up a Utah football fan, as I've mentioned many times on these airwaves, OC, this might maybe my first time learning about Greg Newman and his impact on that team, and also, unfortunately, his suffering afterwards. So it was if you're like me, maybe you grew up in this state, but you weren't a local college, a fan of one of the local teams, or you're new to the area. This is certainly an illuminating read about the impact he had on Utah football program, and also what everything you said about it's just a sobering piece on our love of the brutal nature of contact sports, but also the unfortunate consequences of that for some players, and Greg Newman being one of them.
All right, so we'll get to that with Chris Kamrani coming up now in about 13 minutes. We'll take a break here. On the other side, Luka, a new look Luka Doncic, and the motivation behind it. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Live Night Divides presenting our 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai. That's Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City's rising Granary District. Find more details at ESPN700sports.com. Go check it out right now. Luka. New look for Luka Doncic. This is...
New Luke for Luka?
New Luka. Okay, so... Is this a real lifestyle change for Luka, who's now gone sugar-free, gluten-free, increased his training regimen? Is this somebody who listened to the criticisms, maybe heard some, as hurt as he was by the whole Dallas thing and by the fact that they were not only willing to trade him, but that they didn't even get back market value for him because it was just like, oh, he's a young guy with a bad body. He's not a professional. He drinks too much, whatever. That clearly the relationship was bad there. But maybe after the anger and after the hurt of that reaction, maybe somebody took him aside, or maybe he took himself aside, for lack of a better term, and he said, you know what? Some of these criticisms are valid. I could put in some more work on my body. Maybe being around LeBron James and seeing the longevity and the sustainability of not only the career, but the greatness of the career. Maybe he's just like, how do you do that? And LeBron's like, you work out, dude. This doesn't happen by accident.
You drink light beer if you drink beer at all, my guy. Like, come on now.
Like, whatever it is, Luka's now magazine cover fit.
Yep, Men's Health magazine, which is famous for putting shredded guys on their cover. So, yeah, that certainly stood out to me.
So, the other thing about it is, right, it could be like the post-divorce body.
Yeah.
Where people do this to their, like, out of spite. Is this a spite body? Okay.
Spite body.
Is he, James, I'm asking you, is this a spite body? Is this I'm now being influenced by one of the great professionals to ever do this thing body? Is this I had a little come to Jesus moment with myself about, some of the criticisms that were levied towards me kind of body? Is this a flash in the pan? Enes Kanter did this at one time when he was with the Utah Jazz kind of thing. Where are we at with Luka, the shredded version?
I think that there could be some spite body to it. I don't think that that's all of it. I also think that it might end up being flash in the pan. I wouldn't say a la Enes Kanter and his freedom now. I would say a la Shaq in 2000. Shaq, the 1 year he won MVP, that's the year that in his Lakers career anyway, he and Kobe both acknowledged that, oh, we're on the same wavelength. This guy is willing to put in the work that I'm willing to put in, from Kobe's perspective, to be the greatest. And Shaq really only did that one off season, at least in his Lakers career. The rest of the time he was famously out of shape and yet still dominating the league. So I wonder if it's going to be 2000 Shaq, where it's like, okay, I've heard all of you. I've heard how you guys think I'm lazy. I've heard how you guys think I don't care that I'm too fat, too overweight to be to truly be an MVP, to truly be an NBA champion. So this offseason, I'm going to show you guys, and then after I get it done, my suspicion is we might see the old Luka just like we saw the old Shaq.
I'm going to give you a hot take that is not supported by any real science, but skinny Luka is more likely to get hurt. It's counterintuitive because you would think that a guy who pays more attention and takes better care of the body, shows up in better shape, should not get hurt. I'm telling you, man, look at – and basketball isn't exactly a contact sport, but it's also not a contact sport, right?
Yeah, I think it's if we're going to be technical about it, I think that it's technically classified as a contact sport. It's not a collision sport like NFL.
Yeah, that's
right?
probably a better, like, it's not supposed to be rough, but it is rough. And there's levels to all that. It's not
Yeah.
going to take the tax on your body that hockey or rugby or football does, certainly. But like there's some contact, and the league protects certain guys from certain amounts of contact, whatever.
Yeah.
But also, like, if you look at some of the guys in the roughest sports, like when Ovechkin takes off his sweater, okay, he's not a dude with like some shredded, oh my gosh, like
Greek god type body. Yeah.
basically no hockey player has that body. There's just very few guys that are even impressive when they take off the equipment in hockey. And yet those dudes are absolute savages contact-wise and incredibly tough, and most of them incredibly durable. When you look at there's just so many examples of the dudes who are like shredded beyond belief and can't stay on the field or on the court or on the whatever. And then there are guys that look like they could be your mailman, and you're like, oh, you're
a professional athlete?
a professional athlete?
Oh, and you're
like,
one of
yeah,
the best in your sport?
I've been playing 14 years. You're like, what? How is that your body then? Like, we joke about this all the time in the sport of MMA. But if you look at the greatest fighters of all time, like the best fighters of all time, the Mount Rushmore, the top 4, the top 5, one of them has a good body. One. His name's George St. Pierre. He was shredded. The rest of them, compared to like your average fighter at the PFL or UFC level, because most of those guys are shredded, right?
Yeah.
The best ones, the very best ones, you're just like, I can tell you work out and there's some muscle under that fat, but Anderson Silva never, like maybe one fight had a six-pack. One of the best to ever do it. Fedor Emelianenko, greatest Russian heavyweight of all time, maybe the greatest heavyweight of all time, never looked like he was even an athlete. Daniel Cormier was a U.S. Olympic wrestler who then went on to become a great MMA fighter. He would, during fights, James, pull his waistband of his shorts up over his belly button because he was embarrassed about his belly. Not because he was out of shape. He had an incredible gas tank. It's just like some people don't have that shredded body, and the durability and the I guess ability to just absorb contact and stay in competition even at the highest level is something different when you're a little bit loosey-goosey. When you have a little bit more fat. I don't know. There's no science behind it, I don't think. Or maybe there is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I will say I learned something. I believe it was Michelle Smallman on the new Unsportsmanlike show on ESPN Radio, which you can hear 4 to 7 here on ESPN 700 92.1 FM every morning. I believe it was her that said this. It may have been another female that media member who spent a long time covering baseball, but she said you can't pull fat is a saying in baseball circles as a reason, which I think is probably ridiculous, probably not a reason why baseball players who aren't totally muscular toned don't get injured as often, anecdotally. But that is something that baseball players have said for a long time, apparently. Have some fat on your body because you can pull muscles, but you can't pull fat.
I mean,
I'm not sure how much stock I put into it, but it is something that some people believe, at least in a superstitious
Mike
level.
Trout might have the best physical build of all baseball players. Like, he's not Giancarlo Stanton or Aaron Judge, but I mean, like, the most universally athletic build. Like, he could be any athlete. He could play in any sport, probably. He's been injured a lot. It's
true. Can't pull fat, Mike Trout.
That tiny anecdote supports my entire point, so I'm running with it. All right?
I want you to use that on a PFL broadcast now. Hey, this guy doesn't look as good as this guy, but he's better because you can't pull fat.
So this is a real thing, okay? Coming up in 2 weeks, we have a PFL title fight at 185 pounds. The favorite in the fight is a British guy who's in shape, but not shredded. The challenger, you would call him, the guy who's the underdog in the fight, but he's a former college wrestler and college football player, an American cat. He literally posted on his Instagram the other day. He weighs 206 pounds. He did one of those body scans. 200 pounds of muscle, of lean body mass. Sorry, bone, muscle, whatever.
Yeah.
He weighs 206. He has 6 pounds of fat total in his body. He's the most shredded dude I've ever seen, even in MMA. And that's the matchup at 185 pounds. And it's like,
And he's the underdog.
and he's the underdog. And I mean, he's going to have a hard time winning this fight. So it's wild the way that stuff works. Anyway,
I want you to use can't pull fat. I want you to introduce that to the MMA world.
I'll tell you what, that's the perfect fight to do it, James. I'll say it if I have to. All right, got to take a quick one here. The tone is going to change a little bit. Chris Kamrani is joining us. He wrote an incredible article in The Athletic about the late Greg Newman, who was an important part of the Sugar Bowl defense, and unfortunately, his life ended prematurely, tragically. Chris Kamrani talked to the family. The family talked to medical professionals. CTE was present in Greg's brain. We'll get into some of the details next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Hour number 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome back to Utah's number one sports talk, your home of the Utes. The question is still out there. Your breakout players for the year on offense and defense for the University of Utah. I want you to get on the record before Kyle Whittingham starts his post-practice media availabilities during camp and says, so-and-so's having a great camp so far. This guy really impressed me. Hopefully there'll be a true freshman or two that crack the depth chart that is usually promising for the pipeline. You don't want too many of them, though, obviously. Offensive and defensive, 8 breakout players, 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports if you want to tweet at us. Hopefully you took some time, as I suggested you should, to go read the Chris Kamrani article about Greg Newman, former Utah football player who is unfortunately no longer with us after he passed. The cause of death was multiple organ failure because of I think you pronounce it kratom, excessive use of kratom, or however you say it, a stimulant. He'd been dealing with some mental health issues, and it seems like, in hindsight, a lot of those may have been exacerbated by CTE. And Chris did a really, I think, excellent piece of writing, but also an important piece of writing for all of us who are huge fans of college football. And most of you listening probably at one point at least were huge fans of Greg Newman and his work as a member of that Sugar Bowl defense. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic joins us now on the Sean O'Connell Show. Hey, Chris, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Sean, how's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I appreciate you. You know I'm a big fan of your writing, and we've got to know each other a little bit. And this was, I think, the hardest piece I've had of yours to read for me, because I knew Greg a little bit, and the head trauma thing hits close to home for people who played sports like football and maybe did MMA or boxing or something as well, like I did. And I know for you, you're a professional about this, but I imagine this was not an easy piece to write.
No, and I think what first attracted me to the topic was I was the beat writer for the Crony that year in 2008. So this was back when Kyle allowed reporters to watch practice, to report on practice. They often had practice at Rice Eccles, so I have vivid memories of walking down the long concrete, tunnel down to practice and talking to guys. And Greg was one of the guys that I talked to quite a bit. And obviously I traveled the country, following that team that year. They went undefeated, and Greg was my age. We graduated at the same time. He was in the Huntsman Center in his cap and gown the same time I was that May in 2009. And like so many other people, I forgot about Greg. And I think in our line of work, you're usually instructed to write about the most tantalizing prospect, the person or player with the highest ceiling, or just the most skilled, intriguing player. And when I saw that Greg passed last May, I just felt compelled, like I needed to find out more. So this was a reporting journey that lasted 17 months in totality, and it was really illuminating, heartbreaking on too many levels to really count. And it was I just want to make clear that I've had a lot of great feedback in lieu of the article, and it's gotten so many glowing reviews, but all of this is due to the fact that Greg's family was willing to be transparent about what he went through the last 15 years. Because if they're not willing to sit down with me month after month for over a year and talk about the hardest stuff imaginable, this story doesn't get written and his story doesn't get told. And like I've said before, these guys once upon a time starred with the brightest of lights shining on them. And a lot of them, their stories end in the dark. And I wanted to kind of bring light into the darkness through Greg's lens and the experience that he unfortunately had.
So take me a little bit deeper into that. There's some details in the article, obviously, but one of the maybe most pernicious things about the whole CTE threat is that you don't know exactly how it's going to manifest from one person to another. You don't know when it's going to be most, I guess, acute. You don't know what situations might exacerbate it, might make it worse, what substances people might use or whatever. And it seems like with Greg's story, there was an interplay of a lot of factors there. So in this particular case, when did the signs really start for Greg Newman?
Yeah, and that, Sean, was like among the most troubling initial shockwaves for me was a year after we graduated from college. His mom and sister started telling me that that's when Greg started having symptoms, just a year after he started playing football or ended his college football career. And Greg, mind you, is like most every other football player in this country, started playing around the age of 10. And, he was fortunate enough to play through college. So he had a 13-year tackle football career, which might seem like a lot, but it's not that out of the ordinary for kids who go on to play college football. And the fact that he started showing symptoms around the age of 24 was astounding to me. And to have them really detailed timeline of how these things manifested with voices starting to percolate in his mind, with severe bouts of catatonia where he just would not be present for minutes on end, for talking to people who weren't there, talking to the wall. I mean, it was extremely difficult to have to make multiple loved ones relive that, because I think a lot of people, if they've experienced kind of the mental deterioration of a loved one, whether it be through Alzheimer's or dementia, or even in this case of Greg's with CTE, it is among the most painful, because that it eventually becomes that your memory, fair or not, remembers that version of the person, and it's harder to remember the person they were before the symptoms started. So for the past 15 years, Greg was on the downslope. The decline wasn't swift. It took time. There were times where he had really good stretches where he went 5 to 6, 7 months with not too many episodes, and then there would be times where it was just like, this is not the Greg that we know. And his family always kind of believed in the back of their minds, like, because there's no serious history of mental illness in their family, because he showed no signs of it as a teenager and as a young adult before he stopped playing football, they felt like his playing career had to do something with this. Like, it just made the most logical sense that for Greg to change and to experience something so drastic in such a short amount of time, that the likelihood was the repetitive head trauma that he suffered during his playing career. And as you mentioned, we still don't know so much about CTE, and it's a buzzword for a lot of people. Some fans have been very turned off by the prevalence of it, and it's harder for them to watch football. And then there's some fans who say it's an overblown kind of science talking point. And to be able to report this story firsthand for so long over the last year, it was really heartbreaking. But it's also interesting to me too, Sean, that like we still don't know why it affected somebody like Greg. And you talk about that 08 Sugar Bowl defense. I mean, they had 7 guys drafted. Like, Greg was the only guy on that defensive line that started in the Sugar Bowl that wasn't drafted. So many of those guys went on to play 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years in the NFL, and by all accounts, they're doing okay. So where we find ourselves with the study of this trauma and this disease is, that they're doing a lot better, but there's still so many unknowns. But to hear about the day in, the day out, the weekly bouts, the monthly bouts, and then just to see it kind of descend into a state of mania over the last 15 years of his life was really difficult.
Something that I at least want to bring to the air, because it was an important thing for me to read in the article, which is probably a personal flaw. I have mutual friends with Greg. We knew each other in passing. We're social media friends, so to speak, and we would occasionally chat, like on Facebook. He followed my fighting career, and I obviously was a big fan of his when he played football and things like that. I wasn't a real life friend of Greg, but I would see, you see posts,
mm-hmm.
and again, I'm telling on myself here, but I would see what looked like, oh man, he's losing it. This guy's on
Yep.
drugs. And the reason I say that, and I admit that, is because in the article, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that like self-medication actually was not part of his journey until very late in this process. And long after I would have seen, or people maybe who followed him on social media or whatever would have seen and maybe assumed. Like I shouldn't have assumed, but I did. Like, oh, he's in New York working for this bank. And then the next thing you see is him posting stuff that makes no sense at all and seems very delusional. And my immediate assumption was not, oh, CTE is maybe the root cause of this, or head trauma accumulated over years could be affecting him. My assumption was, oh man, he's fallen on substance abuse or something like that. And in the article, it seems like that wasn't the case.
It was not the case, but it's interesting you say that, Sean. When we talk about a story of this scope and size, like, believe it or not, I think the story ended up around like 3,500 words, which in sports journalism is like probably like way too long for 99% of the editors. But this story in reality could have been 10,000 words long, just because of the amount of, powerful anecdotes and things that people talk to me about. And one of the most powerful things that was the hardest thing for me to cut was the fact that after he died, his sister Laura and brother-in-law Jeff got access to his phone, and they had assumed that a lot of people had kind of forgotten about Greg, and his teammates weren't checking in on him. But when they went into his social media accounts, there was just like endless scrolls of unread messages from friends and former teammates asking what's going on, how can I help? And Greg didn't read them because he wasn't in the right frame of mind. And in the last year of his life, that's correct. Like, he started self-medicating when he was living on the street, but it wasn't the first 14 years of his unfortunate journey through CTE did not feature substance abuse issues. So that was very hard to hear, because the kind of the idea of Greg's life ending the way it did was so many fans forget about Greg. So many teammates might have forgotten about Greg. And a lot of people do. That's just the nature of the sport. College football is so cyclical, especially in today's day and age, that it's impossible to try to ask a fan to remember one of the 85 scholarship players or whatever the number is now. It's changed so much. And I understand that 2008 now is much further away than it was, a few years ago. But the fact that people were trying to reach out to Greg, the fact that people were trying to get to him, and they noticed this, but he wasn't of sound mind enough to click on it and see it and try to respond, is one of dozens of really heart-wrenching anecdotes that come along with the story.
And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I think that when we don't know the details of how some of these things go, we assume the wrong things and maybe attribute it to like some kind of character flaw in the person. And I felt guilty about that, I was like, first of all, substance abuse, like addiction issues are their own illness. And
Mm-hmm.
So I should be a lot more charitable in those things as well. But it's like, I don't know. I thought it was important to say, because there are people that will listen to conversations like this or read articles like this, and they'll say, oh, well, if you would have done this instead, if you hadn't been into drugs or hadn't been drinking, then the brain would be able to withstand some of that damage and stuff. And I wanted to, because that wasn't this. That's not what this was. Maybe it is for other people. For Greg Newman, that was not the case. That was not the reason why it went so south.
Well, and even if it was, Sean, like the common denominator is the traumatic brain damage that forced Greg's actual chemical, the tissue in his brain. It caused him to change who he was over time, gradually. It's so much so that, like you said, so I think a lot of people who knew Greg came across social media posts in recent years and noticed that it wasn't just, it didn't just seem odd. It was gibberish. It was beyond comprehension. And listen, I've had to, tell myself the importance of the story ad nauseum over the last year, but the anecdotes in the story speak for themselves. And like here's Greg Newman, a starter on one of the best stories in college football in the last 25 years, had a sack in the Sugar Bowl. 13 million people watched his guy sack John Parker Wilson. And last year he's home in his hometown in Southern California, another unhoused person with a big beard, trying to sell pictures of dragons that he drew, thinking that it's going to turn the tide, thinking that the dragons might come back to life. Like, this is something that like people need to understand, that while we don't know the science of why it affects some people and why it doesn't, this is the toll it can take. And once you go down this road, even as a journalist, like it is hard to like ignore this type of stuff. Like this season, I'll just like be honest, like this football season will be different for me because I've always been kind of the sports writer that takes pride on not buying into the macho mentality of the sports that I cover, football being the most obvious one because it's the main part of my job. But this season will be different because I've seen up close what this can do to somebody at such a young age. I mean, these things were manifesting in Greg at age 24. There are probably some 24-year-olds there are 24-year-olds playing college football this year. So this is a very sensitive issue. It's an important topic. And I think the fact that Greg's family was willing to talk to me through all the painful stuff that they went through and saw Greg go through only will hopefully shine light on who Greg was as a person before the symptoms started, as well as what happened to him afterwards, because both things need to be told.
I'm going to ask you a really unfair question, but how should a story like this, and unfortunately there's thousands of them probably,
mm-hmm.
How should a story like this affect our relationship with what has become America's pastime? I mean, football is our passion now, and not just college football, NFL football, Little League football, etc. How can we be responsible as fans and also realistically not just cut football out of our lives, because most of us won't? Again, it's an unfair question.
Well, based on the folks at BU that I talked to, like Dr. Ann McHugh, who's on the cutting edge technology of CTE study, like she said, really the only way you find a way to eradicate this is by eliminating contact sports. And this isn't specific to football. Football is the easiest one because it's the most obvious one. But, my colleagues at the Times a few years ago ran maybe the hardest series that I've ever had to read. And it was a series of teenagers and people in their 20s who were diagnosed with CTE, who played high school football, high school soccer, high school hockey. Like this is not specific to football. It is usually more specific to football, but you're never going to get rid of it. It is going to be up to the individual. It's going to be up to the parents, really, at the end of the day. Greg's mom, Yvonne, who was, amazing throughout this whole process, just said that, in her opinion, she would love to be able to see kids not play tackle football until they get to the high school level, and see how that goes. I don't think that's realistic in this country, just because, like you said, it's a cultural component. It is who we are, but it would be cool to be able to have kind of a coalition of some sort, or an independent group of people, former players, current players, doctors, whomever, to be able to really talk through the impact this can have on young people, because we're seeing it impacting people younger and younger. Whereas I think when CTE first started percolating, 15, 20 years ago with the concussion movie, like it was a lot of folks who, were in their 50s and 60s, and then Junior Seau came along, then the Aaron Hernandez case came along, and we're just seeing this in younger people. So I'm not the right person to ask, Sean. I just think like it would be nice to be able to have people tackle this, no pun intended, like issue on a more grandiose level. But it's difficult because you're talking about $1 billion entertainment industry, and it dominates our airwaves, unlike any other sport we have in this country. And like, I think you can make an argument that secondary to politics, football is like the second most talked about thing in the news cycle, like 24/7. So, yeah, I just hope that Greg's story gets read by people, and that people can understand the toll that it can take on some people, and the fact that, you know, to your point, not assume if somebody's going through something, and just try to, you know, try to figure it out, try to think outside the box, so to speak.
This is several years ago now, but we had at the time the head of the Boston Brain Bank on the show I was doing, and talked about, you know, there's no way to diagnose this while someone's alive, and this is all post-mortem, you know, autopsy type stuff where you discover whether or not somebody's brain shows the signs of CTE. Do we know if we're any closer to finding a living test to determine whether CTE is present in a human?
It sounds like, based on some reporting from folks in the science department of the Times in recent years, they are getting closer to a potential blood test or brain scan. But the pathology behind CTE is so intense and so invasive that, you know, you're basically studying pieces of the brain that you've cut over a year's worth of time, which is, you know, takes a lot of time. So I hope so. I would imagine that we'll get there eventually, but I don't think there's currently anything around the corner.
The technology of helmets is different. Those dummy caps, or whatever they're called, that you pointed out in the article, are now, they're kind of ubiquitous. I mean, everyone's wearing them, at least for practices, and some guys wear them in competition. Do we know the science on how significant the difference those will make?
We do not yet. I mean, the Guardian caps only burst on the scene a couple of years ago, and I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but I think coaches in general have really toned down practice, like live drills anyways. So I think you would have to like get hard data from people who are wearing them in games, because that's when you literally can't like slow down. Like, the whole purpose is to either run away from the person or to bring that person down to the ground by any means necessary. So I think the Guardian caps are positive, but I just don't know what kind of data they'll have in the near future.
What's the next? Will you take another venture into this particular topic?
It's, you know, it has been a heavy load, to say the least. Because like, you just take so much time. Your due diligence goes into something that lasts like this for over a year, and to be able to do it is a pleasure, and it's a privilege, and it's definitely going to go down as one of my most rewarding stories. But it takes an emotional toll, especially as a parent now. You know, I'd be lying if I said like there were times where I would be sitting there with his family, and like, you know, myself get choked up, and you just get it's human nature to see somebody describe some of the hardest days or years of their life and just sit there and be stoic. I'd like to pretend like I am a very stoic person, and I might present that way outside, but it was a heavy lift. So I'm probably going to take a break and venture back into the realm of silliness for a while, just because I need to lighten it up a little bit.
Has the Utah football community done right by the Newman family?
Well, I think so, because you know, they were part of the family was invited to the reunion that Sly put together in April. Not everybody showed up. I mean, it's been almost 20 years now, but they did an interview with Yvonne and Greg's sister Laura as part of the presentation for folks who were there. They gave the family their cool Letterman jackets, and signed a team ball and gave it to his mom, who has it displayed in her home, along with Greg's framed number 56 jersey from the Sugar Bowl. This is a tricky thing. I mean, the family wanted to make clear from day one that they don't blame Utah. They don't blame anybody at the school. This is a byproduct of football. And Greg, believe it, like, Greg would later tell his mom that he wished he hadn't played football. But when you're a 19 to 23-year-old kid who's really good at something, it's impossible to tell somebody, hey, you might be really good at this, but it's probably in your best interest to stop doing it. And if you know, another interesting part of the story is, like, Greg tore his hamstring leading up to the combine in 09. Considering how good Utah's defense was in 09, like Greg definitely would have been an undrafted free agent at minimum going into that camp, because even though he was undersized, he was a big guy. He probably could have got another look at a different position. But yeah, this is a tricky subject, and they wanted to make clear that nobody's to blame. This is just the reality that can befall somebody who played football, and unfortunately, it hit Greg.
Well, I could talk to you for another 20 minutes. We're up against it. I appreciate you giving us the time. Another incredible piece. I appreciate everything you do. You're one of the best in the business. And thanks, man. Really, really incredible stuff.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
That's Chris Kamrani of The Athletic. The article, as James said earlier, he found his place in the world through football, but CTE would lead to 15 years of suffering. It's a really well-executed piece about Greg Newman, who was an important part of that Sugar Bowl defense. I know that the hardcore Utah football fans actually will not have forgotten Greg at all, because he was the one of these things is not like the other. He was the guy without the NFL body who was giving you big-time production on that Sugar Bowl team. He had 50 tackles at defensive line. He had 9.5 tackles for loss. Chris mentioned he had the Sugar Bowl sack. They had 8 that day. His was number 5. And he was an important part of the defense, and he was an important part of the team. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and at least part of the reason for that, and it seems like maybe the primary reason for that, was CTE. And football would have been, for Greg, the source of that CTE. There are other ways that it can happen. For him, it was football. And there are other outcomes for people who play football, obviously. But this is one, and I feel like it's an important conversation to have, even as we're on the precipice of football season, and we're all about to really lean in and love watching these football games and hear these stories about people playing and winning and overcoming adversity and being the guy like Greg was that really kind of has no business being a starter from a physical makeup standpoint, from an actual God-given talent standpoint, and just works their behind off. I mean, there's quotes from Kyle Whittingham, there's quotes from Gary Anderson, there's quotes from Mike Wright, other teammates in the article that I really do encourage you to read, about how everyone, that's what he was known for. He was the worker. He was the guy that just wasn't going to give up. And it led to some pretty significant glory for him on the football field. And I hope some serious happiness for him when he was young. And then, unfortunately, it just went the wrong way as it took a toll on his brain.
Real quick, I wanted to say a couple of things and also ask you a question, OC. It certainly, I already mentioned I was not familiar with him. I was familiar with maybe a couple of guys from that, Brian Johnson, the quarterback,
sure,
at the time, and not many other people on that team, because Brian Johnson was obviously that position front facing. So not being that familiar with it, because I wasn't a Utah football fan at the time, it was great to learn about a guy's story like that, to learn about a guy's overcoming adversity, to have that great success, and also very obviously very sad to hear how it went south for him and it led to him dying young. But also one thing that Chris Kamrani said that hit home for me as a new father is he mentioned he's a relatively new father as well, how that's just, it hits different when you're thinking about, I want my kid to be able to love sports and play sports, and you go, but you hear these kind of stories and you go, but I don't know about football. I don't know about hockey. I don't know about combat sports. You did both. You played football. You grew up playing football. You made a career in combat sports. How does this hit for you reading about these things?
Well, I was texting Chris about this.
You're also to cut you off. You're also a young father, you're a father of young children who, girls don't have as many opportunities to play tackle football, but they have opportunities to do other things in sports and other things that hopefully don't lead to this
Sure.
sort of thing, but could put them at risk, right?
Yeah, I got emotional several times reading the article, and I talked with Chris about this privately, and reading an article about somebody who, quite frankly, probably, took better care of his brain than I have, and still had this happen to him, made me emotional because you don't think about those risks when you're young. I honestly, James, I didn't think about it one time. I didn't think about it in football. I didn't think about it when I started fighting. I didn't think about it after the first time I got knocked out because I woke up and I was fine. I didn't feel post-concussion syndromes. I wasn't dizzy, no light sensitivity. I'm not an idiot. I know that there are risks, but I didn't internalize those risks because I didn't feel them. I didn't feel like I know people who've had concussion problems and they're like wary about getting their heads hit. I never was because I'm lucky. And so reading that article made me grateful that I've been so lucky, but it's scary, right? Because Greg, I'm sure, and his family, I'm sure, weren't like, oh, that was the hit that did it. That's the hit that's going to make him start changing, right? And I'm grateful that I retired when I did because I retired before my children were born. So at least whatever faculties remain with me are not going to be diminished by further risk taking, right? But also, I don't know how you tell someone or ask someone, don't do the thing that you love. Don't do the thing that really drives you. In that moment, are you going to tell a 17, 18, 19, 21-year-old who's good at something, hey, this thing that you're really good at and is going to give you a free education, and now, by the way, not only give you a free education, it's going to give you potentially life-changing money. It's going to set you up. You're going to tell those people, you can't do this. It's too dangerous. There's all these articles. There's all of these studies. There's so many layers to this conversation, and we've seen it. The trending, by the way, in current youth participation in American football is in affluent neighborhoods. The numbers have fallen. They haven't changed in any kind of meaningful way in, lower to middle class neighborhoods because it's still considered like an avenue of success. It's still something like you can get a scholarship for this. You can get a job doing this. You can make it to the NFL and things like that. Whereas, if you're from a place of privilege, and this is not me speaking, this is the numbers saying this, maybe your parents are just like, you know what, we don't have to do this. The same, by the way, has been true of boxing in the United States of America for a very, very, very long time. Like the great American boxers are Latino or they're black, with rare exception. Those communities have embraced it in a different way. Those communities have not abandoned the risk-taking of boxing specifically. MMA, we'll see. It's still too new, I think. And I'm getting off topic of what your conversation actually was, but it is a sobering reminder that you take risks. And by the way, Chris did a good job of pointing this out. The Newman family apparently wanted to make sure everyone knew there's no blame game being played here. It's not Utah football's fault. It's not going to be BYU's football fault or Utah State's football's fault or Weber State or Jordan High School or whatever when these things happen. It is a cultural component. It is an individual choice in almost every case, whether or not you're going to participate in something. And for me, it certainly was. I know people who know Greg very, very well. And they spoke glowingly about him and still do. And it's sad that he's gone, and it's sad that football played a part in that. We never get to ask Greg, whether or not, really was it still worth the trade-off for you? I think the answer to that probably now is no.
Yeah, and even if we could have a couple of years ago, you mentioned that how much his mind had gone because of CTE and The article mentions that there might have been a predisposition to psychosis as well,
Yeah.
which may have made his symptoms worse. We wouldn't have been taught a long, thoughtful consideration when you are introducing your kids to sports as to what sports you would like them to pursue. And of course, like you said, OC, if their passion is in a certain thing, there's no way you can stand in the way of that, but it should still be a thoughtful, long considered proposition.
I mean, unfortunately, there's risk in everything that we do, and there's risk for your brain in every sport, even if it's not a contact or combat sport necessarily. I mean, you can get baseball injuries and soccer injuries and all these kinds of things. It's just sad. And I'll close with this. I said this, and again, I'm probably telling on myself by saying this, but my first assumption when I saw what I saw was, oh, this person is now addicted to something, or this guy, I incorrectly thought that Greg had gotten into substance abuse. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago. And not that changes the equation very much, because that in itself is a disease for a lot of people, but it's just a reminder to myself and hopefully to you by my own mistake. Like, you should never assume. There's always more to the story. And I don't know that it would have changed anything if, there'd been intervention of the proper kind. Because I don't know, man. Maybe people thought the same thing I did and were like, hey, you need to go to rehab. And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't need to go to rehab. I don't do anything that would require that. I don't know. I truly don't know. But thanks to Chris Kamrani and by extension to the Newman family for making that article possible. And hopefully that was a meaningful conversation for you to hear and to listen to it. Thank you for being here, as always. We'll double up, and then we'll come back and close out the show on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, before we get out of here, 801-850-9100. Advanced Windows has a deal going on right now, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Call them. You know what? Don't even commit to anything. Just call them, have them come out to the house, measure, give you a quote on windows, have them give you an estimate on what kind of energy savings you're looking at, pull out the air conditioning bill, pull out the heating bills in the winter, and say, this is where I'm at right now. Energy-efficient windows, where do you think those could get me? And just listen to the numbers. I promise you it's going to give you some food for thought. And it's going to make your house look nicer. It's going to improve the resale value if that's something you're looking at. You really can't go wrong with a company right here in Salt Lake City. They'll measure your windows. They'll manufacture your windows. They'll install your windows. They'll warranty your windows right here at a place that you could drive down to with no middleman. 801-850-9100, advancedwindows.com. Tell them OC sent you. $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Call now and get on the schedule. All right, Scott Mitchell is filling in on the drive for Spence Checketts today. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I am amazing.
The host of Down and Dirty. Now it's the Down and Dirty Drive.
The Down and Dirty Drive today, yes.
I like it.
Yeah.
We had Chris Kamrani on for actually most of the hour, talking about the article he wrote about the late great Greg Newman, former Utah defensive lineman, who unfortunately passed young, and the post-mortem they discovered evidence of CTE, and it appears that was a part of his decline. And Scott, you played football a lot longer than most human beings on earth, and you had teammates that played for just as long as you. And James asked the question of me, so you're much more important to ask it to. Like, how much do you think about this kind of stuff? How big a part of your life is this with former teammates, friends, people that are in your cohort, so to speak, that have had to deal with some of these issues? Hopefully, not to the same degree as the Newman family.
If I'm being honest, probably not a lot. And I think a lot of that is because you don't want to think about it. You don't want to spend too much time dwelling on that kind of stuff. There has to be some type of impact on your body, your brain, all of it. I mean, I'm reminded every morning when I wake up how sore my body is. It takes a minute, whether it's my knees or shoulders or my back, it's ankles, anywhere there's a joint somewhere, it seems to have some kind of an issue. So you deal with it, and you realize, there's some guys that live a long life, and sometimes they don't. I don't know definitively like how much of an impact it has across the board. Like, does it reduce your life? Does it reduce the quality of your life, significantly? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure someone does, or maybe none of us want to know.
I don't even think we do. I don't think there's a good way to find out that answer right now, because there's and you know this better than I do. There's guys who stuck their nose into every pile for 20 years, right? And their heads got beat all to hell, and they're fine. And then there's other guys like that had the Junior Seau story.
Yeah.
And they didn't play that differently, right? So I think genetics have a lot to do with it. We don't know enough yet.
Yeah, you wonder, is it genetics? Is it lifestyle? Is there a cumulative effect where maybe there's some guys that use performance-enhancing drugs and they have, or they're alcohol-related, having it all together, and maybe it has an acceleration effect on things. I don't know I don't know that anyone knows how some guys live longer and some guys live shorter. I know that my brain's been tested. Like I've had extensive analysis done on, it was 2 days. It was like about 10 hours each day. And I don't have issues, which part of me is disappointed because I can't explain some of the dumb things. And I'm older than 25 now, so I know my brain's fully developed. But so I have looked into it. I'm very happy about my life, and I really work to live and enjoy a happy and productive life and focus on that. And it's important to me, but how long that will last, I have no idea.
Did you, some quarterbacks take big hits and get knocked out. And, we've seen what's happened to Tua. We saw what happened with Steve Young at the end of his career. And, you're You're too tall for most people to hit you in the head.
No. I remember in a playoff game against Derek Brooks, and it was 2-man, and so no one has a quarterback. I took off running, got about 15 yards, and I, for whatever reason, thought, well, I'll just run head on into Derek Brooks right here. And the last thing I saw was his eyes, and the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, and it was like 4 or 5 hours later, and I was laying on a gurney. I was like, how'd I get here?
Wow.
And so I've had those. I think everybody has those issues and those hits. How many? I don't know. I know, understanding concussions, I had quite a few concussions, more than I realized. There were a couple times like that one that I knew for sure, but there could have been other situations that you just kind of shake it off. You get the smelling salts. But I have symptoms, or I had symptoms that told me that I had a concussion, and I wasn't even aware of it.
In better health news, Deion Sanders is cancer-free.
I didn't know he was cancer.
None of us did.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a surprise, and I'm always happy to see when people are able to overcome that. And unfortunately, my sister, a couple of years older than me, got cancer and didn't, and I saw her courageous fight in losing to cancer, and it's something that's really stuck with me, and I've just appreciated how mean and vicious cancer can be, and it's good when people are able to overcome it. And I know there's a lot of work and energy and effort that goes into fighting and curing cancer, and I'm really glad to hear that with Deion.
Yeah, we had a press conference earlier today for those of you just tuning in, and there were all these different voices speculating, including people I know and trust, that were like, "Hey, he's stepping down today." I only heard one good source that had it from their one good source, and so I couldn't. And I'm glad he's not.
Yeah.
The league is better when Deion's coaching in Colorado. So I don't know, just lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's always stuff going on, and I think there are dangers, there's pitfalls, there's challenges in all of life, and as you're talking about this whole concussion issue and cancer and all that stuff, I wouldn't change what I went through and did. I love sports. I love being a part of it. I love playing it at the highest level. It was an incredible experience, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I would be like first in line. It doesn't deter me. I'd actually be more first in line if I got today's salaries. Like, that would even be a little bit easier.
Well, I don't like that idea, because then you wouldn't be here.
Well, I just put in my contract that I could be. So, because if you're older, you don't care. And I would be honest with you too. I wouldn't be like one of these. I'd be like Charles Barkley. I'd tell you the truth. I wouldn't hold back.
That would not have been my concern with you at all, Scott.
Oh.
I never fear that we're going to get a too filtered version of Scott Mitchell.
I mean, why not? It's like, I'd rather people hear the truth and than to hear a bunch of hogwash. Well,
you got 4 more hours of it with Scott Mitchell today. He's a marathon man today on a Monday.
It's fun, by the way, to fill in for you, and I really enjoy it. And it's fun to do, and I hope I don't embarrass you guys, and that we keep at least people on the airwaves.
At this point, we're probably embarrassing you. So, stay tuned for The Drive. This time featuring Scott Mitchell. That's next on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 792 FM. The Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you today and every day by our friends at Big Willie's. Tell them OC sent you at 1717 South Main. Let's do it again tomorrow, people. Goodbye.